welcome to panel discussion. In fact, I was going through the topic of the discussion today, and the topic is very interesting. It talks about the multi-cloud. Although cloud is a very loosely used word, and everyone would hear about this word as a topic. And then sector talks about financial services. So what exactly is the new norm? Financial services. It's a very interesting, subject. And with me, we have a, stellar panel member today who all are stalwarts in the area. And let's hear from them only. But before let me first of all introduce all of my panel members. So we have Mr. Muraleedhar, who is an executive director of Maveric system. We have the KV Dipu, who is the CIO of Bajaj Allianz General Insurance. Then we have Bhavesh Pandey, who is the CISO of Hero, Fincorp. We have Ashton, who is director and CISO of NatWest Markets PLC. All of the stalwarts have, I'm sure they would have done multiple things in terms of the cloud journey and in terms of multi-cloud when we talk about. So we'll hear that what is this multi-cloud definition or multi-cloud journey for the financial services, primarily the banking and the NBFC. Before context, one thing I just want to tell my audience that when we talk about multi-cloud, generally what happens is this: people do confuse or mix this with the hybrid cloud. And to me, it looks like it's, both has a different meaning, both has a different purpose. And, the purpose is this: when we talk about really multi-cloud, we have to see from a parlance of the public cloud that how many vendors, multiple architecture are we using, which really plays an edge for the banking industry. When we all will have witnessed that banking as a service using cloud these days. Yes, there are regulations. Yes, there are governance issues. Yes, there are statutory, but still penetration. At least the NBFC part of it or the insurance part of it, there's a very high penetration, which we have seen. Two things we have to understand from a point of view. Like when we really talk about the multi journey, we have to make sure that what is the real choice which we are making, to adopt to the multi-cloud, because there can be one service provider, there can be other service provider, but really go ahead with this. What's the choosing criteria or what's the flexibility criteria which we really adhere to this? And then we even have to factor in very important point, which is primarily the compliance. That compliance becomes a real issue in this sense, because as such, when we talk about the banking, or as such when we talk about the financial services, compliance is something which is viewed from in a very different way. And this is something in security, but when we talk about cybersec, when we talk about risk, you talk about governance, all of these things plays into this. So why don't we do one thing? Let's open this discussion to the panel members, and let's hear from them, because we have the stellar panel members today who specialize into these topics. And since I'm talking about you come from NatWest, and this is one of the major retail and the commercial bank. Want to hear from you that what are the real challenges which you feel in terms of adhering to the the regulatory compliance or security, for that matter, even the governance for adopting multi-cloud journey, because this in terms of the industry parlance. So would like to hear from you as an expert that what's your view in this.
So thanks, Feroz, and very good day to all my co-panelists. Thanks also to CXO TV and Tech Plus Media for having me over on this session. So as you said, Feroz, this topic is very interesting and very relevant in today's day and age, given the pandemic and how it has disrupted normal life. So cloud was always the future. The pandemic per se has just expedited it, and it's expedited it almost tenfold is what I would say. So if you look at any survey that has been put out on cloud adoption, except in the recent past, I'm sure that no survey would have, no one quotes at least 40% of IT budgets and beyond are towards cloud or migrations and adoption to cloud now. The remaining 60% is taken up by all sort of other requirements of the organization, but a good 40% of it is dedicated towards a cloud setup. Coming to your actual question, and before I actually give my answer, I must say here that the views and opinions that I express here would ideally be in my individual capacity and could or could not be subscribed to the organization that I represent. Since you mentioned NatWest, yes, as NatWest, as the group, we are a major retail and commercial / corporate bank globally. In India, we just set up currently as a corporate bank. But irrespective of the branch in the country or at the group level, for us, the cloud migration is something that has to happen. There's no two ways about it. And we have actually begun the journey and are well through in it. But at the same time, we also have to take care of the various regulatory and security compliance, and also maintain a good overall governance around the entire posture. Having said that, compliance to regulatory and security needs changes in terms of geographies, in terms of locations, and is always moving given the constant change in technology and regulatory requirements as well. So it is not one fixed subject or one fixed destination or one fixed target that someone has to achieve. It is always a moving target that you are constantly trying to benchmark yourself against and ensuring that you are compliant against. And given this requirement, how do we see ourselves? How do we best suit ourselves to this requirement? Is primarily through modernizing of enterprise compliance. What do I mean with that in terms of modernizing and our enterprise compliance is basically to be able to have complete visibility across our cloud borders. Okay, and I speak from it per se as a global and an MNC organizations, which with our footprints in various locations, 53 at the last count that we had. So because of that, we have to basically look and monitor and have complete visibility of the cloud borders in terms of what's running where and who's accessing it in what terms. So who's allowed, who's authorized, what are the types of access levels we have, and what is stored at what location. And this caters to a lot of requirements. More recently, it's the PDPA, which is going to be soon becoming a law in the country. It's also a regulatory requirement from a banking perspective, where the regulator says that all our data needs to be stored locally, nothing can be taken out of the country. And such sort of requirements and regulatory compliances that we need to adhere to. So that's the real thing that we need to see. It's more of a real-time recommendation in terms of our cloud sizing, the resource requirements, and constant monitoring for any security needs. Secondly, that we would have is basically policy-based automated remediation requirements. So this is to cater to security setups, etc., going into real third gen, fourth gen technology, adoption of AI, ML requirements to be able to monitor and adhere to cloud security at an enterprise level. And finally, but not the least, to know exactly what is the data and what you have on the cloud. So cloud in today's world is not just about where you do the computing, but also how do you do the computing. So it is not just the infrastructure as it was first showcased as, it is also developed into how do you do computing. And these are the three parameters across which I would actually look at it from both a governance perspective as well as compliance to regulatory and security requirements.
Very well said, Ashton. In fact, you pointed out 2-3 things which was very important. In fact, you pointed out that how is it this pandemic has given a opportunity for this the cloud as a movement or multi-cloud as a movement, and then you did mention about the modernization issue, which sorts of creates or gives an opportunity to store data in the cloud. But then you did mention and highlighted the risk and the security associated to it. Now, let me go to Bhavesh. Bhavesh, you heard, Ashton. You heard him. He spoke about the risk, the security factors. You heard him. He spoke about the pandemic giving this, opportunity. And his point of view is more from the banking, side of it. Now, I want to flip this side and want to hear from the non-banking NBFC side. And I know that you are one of the stalwart into this. So what's your view, Bhavesh? Like, if I have to ask you, is it that this pandemic has really forced the organization, be it big, small, or medium, whatever it is there, to move their workloads to their own data center as a public cloud? Because we are talking about multi-cloud, and primarily we are talking about different public cloud, getting converged at one place. Is that become really risky or is there a security issue? What's your view, as a practitioner?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me here. So when we say that cloud and in this pandemic, whether this pandemic forced us to move on the cloud, or it's not like that. In fact, cloud journey started a couple of years back only. We have multiple cloud, we have multiple cloud service provider we engaged for different kind of service. But yes, this pandemic has given some push for to speed up this this cloud journey to complete as soon as possible. Because I will give you a little background. Look, the way digitizations are happening in the organization, without taking help or without going on cloud, it's not possible to achieve that digitization in a certain time frame. And earlier, couple of years back, when even regulators has some concern to go on cloud, but the way regulators shift their regulation to adopt cloud for even banking and non-banking, or in fact overall in BFSI sector, now it's a welcome step, a step by this regulator, and every organization are adopting. Same way with in non-banking finance company, like we are lenders, and we have very tough competition to in the market. I will give a few examples. Like in our festival season, in from Dasara to Deepavali, we have festival season. So it's we have to disperse our loan in 1 minute. So you just understand the digitization we have to complete to achieve this target. Because in 1 minute, when customer, you have to onboard your customer, you have to check with multiple bureaus, and then you have to say to your customer, okay, we are giving you that loan, so you can take bike in next 2-3 minutes and go out and celebrate at your home. So that kind of digital transformation is required clouds support. Now comes on security point of view. So it's not like a couple of years back, you can say even 5 years back or 4 years back, even management has thought process, once you moved on cloud, you are totally secure. It's not like that. Still, we have to do a lot of things in security when we are moving to the cloud. So it's again a shared thing. Most of the thing still organization has to do while going on that cloud. And certain area that cloud service provider will give in a security shape. Most of the things like access, hardening of your cloud rules, you have to do at your own. One thing I would like to give you, still this cloud journey in the industry, I think a maximum 30-35% organizations workload is on cloud. And when we say like how we design this, like to move on the cloud. So whenever any new business proposal comes in, a new project comes, we give a think on at least for 5-year journey. So because as of now, we have a hybrid approach. We have still main business application are in-house. New stuff, whatever are coming, we are moving on cloud. So still it's a hybrid approach. So whenever any projects comes, we give a deep thought on that as at least a 5-year plan. Whatever suitable for us, we take call. And as I started with that compliance, because regulators are now allowing us to move on the cloud, complying the all requirement related to that RBI as well as NHB guidelines, because in Hero Fincorp, we have one housing company also. It's very much important. We always analyze the risk on moving on cloud, and after that assessment of this, we decide to, and we take call whether we have to move on cloud or not. But yes, this pandemic forced us to speed up our digitization journey.
So, 2-3 again, very important points, which I was just listening carefully. Like, yeah, you did mention about the digital transformation as its importance, and then club that to the security, which is of paramount importance. But then what I heard from you is this, the crux, what you are, highlighting is this: agility and speed matters a lot for this. And then
Exactly.
when we talk about agility and speed, exactly what we are doing is this: we want to bring different innovation in the form of transformation, but then at the same time, the expectation is this: we want that to be in a speedy manner. It has to be agile, and that's how this will really give a. So you took an example of lending journey or a mortgage journey, and yeah, I can correlate that the analogy of the lending, what you are talking about. You gave an example of that Dussehra and Diwali. do we really speed up the requirements or innovate something in a very disruptive market? And very much agree with you. So now let me go to you heard, Bhavesh, you heard that although security is of paramount importance, but then if we want to do an innovation and disruption, that is something which has to be thought through well. No, you are one of a industry leader who has spent enough time into this, in this industry. You understand this topic well, you understand the industry well. Now, let me ask you one thing, that what are your priorities when we talk about the innovation and disruption? So, how are you prioritizing your innovation and disruption, and how that deployment can be taken to either a multi-cloud or, for that matter, a hybrid cloud, specifically for the BFSI vertical? So, what's your view? Can you share your perspective on this?
Yeah. Thanks, Feroz. You have actually asked me two questions in one question. So let me take them, one by one. The first is, from an innovation and a disruption perspective, one thing which COVID-19 has done, Feroz, is it's basically made, customers very wary of touch. So from a UI and UX perspective, we are essentially focusing on touchless experience. Just to share two instances, today when customers walk into our branches, since we cannot shake hands with them, since we cannot encourage paperwork, what we essentially do is, we have installed barcodes. So customers basically scan these codes and they get their request fulfilled. So scan the QR code and, get a request for your insurance policy fulfilled, the policy registered to your email ID. That's one. The other is we were pioneers in terms of integrating our AI-driven chatbot with voice, as in Alexa and Google Assistant, when they were launched in India, which means you can basically aware of services using voice. You could say, hey, Alexa, while you're using Alexa for maybe, let's say, playing music, you could ask Alexa, hey, Alexa, can I get a copy of my policy from Bajaj Allianz General Insurance? And then the policy will be emailed to your registered email ID. Similarly, you could ask for the nearest hospital or the nearest workshop, so on and so forth. So I think that's clearly, one area which, where we are focusing on, which is, touchless UI UX. The other is health insurance, is an important part of our portfolio. And, insurance being an essential service, when people have to basically undergo hospitalization, whether there is a lockdown or whether there is no lockdown. I mean, that's one thing which is lockdown proof. So I think we invested a lot in terms of, telemedical underwriting, by which, we could digitally, continue to service customers. And in fact, we did not just survive the crisis, we actually thrived through it. In fact, our customer feedback, either from the point of view of 90% dip in our grievances or the highest NPS that we enjoy, bears testimony to this fact. Thirdly, what has also happened, Feroz, is as contact centers, went into shutdown mode, we were able to seamlessly migrate our customers, to all our digital assets. I spoke about the AI-driven chatbot. We also have WhatsApp as an important channel, and we also have customer portal. We have a mobile app. So we figured out key drivers of traffic into our call center, and we built seamless, frictionless customer journeys on our digital assets. So even today, 80% of our servicing happens via these digital assets. So I think these are, a few clear winners, from an innovation perspective. Coming to your second question, around how the, hybrid cloud can help, the BFSI vertical. There are four dimensions to it. I think one is, the whole BFSI sector, has seen a dramatic increase, in shift from offline to online. And as somebody said, there are times when weeks happen in decades, and there are times when, decades happen in weeks. And here, the entire cloud computing component, has played a vital strategy. It's basically helped drive growth, but also helping players, reduce cost and improve flexibility, as well as, client relationships. The second dimension is we all spoke about agility. Today, black swan events are not so infrequent, and therefore there's a huge pressure on the firms, to respond rapidly. And the whole idea of adaptability and changing direction quickly, that's a core principle of a digital business. And therefore, when we combine, public clouds, private clouds, on-prem resources, we gain agility, which can at times become a competitive advantage. The third thing is, by building on a hybrid cloud, we can rapidly deploy key resources across the business, right? And then we can provide solutions faster to business problems. At the end of the day, either it's a new idea which is waiting to be executed, or there is a problem, which needs to be solved. And as everybody knows, right, you can reduce the time spent and the resources to solve problems while enhancing agility in our response to evolving customer needs, regulatory landscape, as well as, the competitive scenario. And the fourth dimension is that this is increasingly becoming the new normal, right? And in order to ensure business continuity, right? Today we have seen COVID-19. You never know, what new black swan event might be around the corner. We can leverage this hybrid cloud services, to derive business directly, from new technologies as they emerge. And as these, crises take us into the new normal, we're also facing disruption, right? For example, there are a lot of, cloud native companies, right? So the whole idea is, how do we all compete while we cooperate to ensure that we are giving access to millions of people? So that's broadly what I wanted to share on these two aspects.
Very valid point, Dipu. Like, in order to compete, you did spoke about that. How do you compete in terms of giving access and data? End of the day, it's all boiling to data, because when you give an example of Alexa, and when you spoke about the AI and the chatbots and all those stuffs, it talks about the, tons and tons of data which you would be, capturing. And obviously, when we talk about the hybrid cloud or a multi-cloud, eventually, we are even in some way correlating that to the data, because there are millions and zillions of petabytes of data which is going to come up, and then managing that. And thus my next question is with Muraleedhar, since you come from a data background, and you heard Dipu, he gave few analogies which is linked somewhere to data, and since you come from this background, my thinking is this: when we talk about any digital transformation, data is sort of an epicenter to that. And when we talk about any cloud landscape, we talk about, obviously we have to think that how do we take the workloads and the data, obviously the secure data, to that. Want to understand from you what kind of benefits to organization will really get or will look for in terms of moving to the cloud, specifically for the quantum of data which Dipu is talking about. So your views, Mr. Muraleedhar.
Okay, thanks, Feroz. Thanks, Dipu and others for sharing the business views. So I'll also try to answer that in a two-part manner. One is from where is the need which is coming from. I'll try to answer it from the tech side of things. Whatever Dipu talked about or Bhavesh talked about in terms of two separately different business cases. One is how to support a large deluge of customer queries which are coming in, and you are handicapped by not having the branch network to help. Or when you're talking about a festive season, huge sudden surge in demand, right? So these are two places where you will suddenly see you cannot meet those demands by going the traditional way of you have in data center, you will get a rack and then you will get 10, 15 machines. So that's the primary premise, in which along with that, as Bhavesh talked about, maybe the journey started much early. In his organization, maybe 2 years, but it was much more cooking for a while, because I think there was an interesting article. I think it was in 2012 when economists covered saying that there's a data deluge. And one statistics which stayed with me, that is in that particular year, 2012, I think the world created more data than the entire time all the way up to 2011, including 2011. Yeah, so that is the amount of data which is available. Right? And they cannot be processed in bespoke method as we used to do. I'm not saying that CIOs were not doing the work, but that's what they had to work within their constraint. And the data deluge also meant that you have to think out of the box. You cannot continue to buy hardware while they are also growing at that particular point of time. So you needed a flexible, scalable, on-demand, and economical access, which can take care of two things: the explosion of data which is coming in, and also having appropriate tools. This brought in another one, which is, okay, you have all these compute devices, or you have the storage, you have the compute, you have the ability to move data between appliances or between applications. Now what? You also needed algorithms to go with it, and you don't look at cloud alone. You look at the open source development in terms of AI and ML, which was able to consume the data which is coming in, and there were applications which were available, right? When you look at it from that point of view, whether you are attempting digitization or customers moving to digital, or generally addressing a growth in business, or simple things like, for example, now when you're buying anything electronically, you are swiping the card. If you are using this card swipe, it is at least, 20 times more, right? Each of the transactions you are doing, a Paytm or any of those things. So each of them is creating that much of data. It doesn't matter how much you are transacting. It is the number of transactions which is creating. So it is all of them are NX, kind of a multiple. And that is where your need for a flexible, elastic platform, which is needed, right? So that explains why cloud is needed. And in terms of data specifically, what has happened is a lot of things are available on the cloud in terms of, somebody was talking about hybrid, one is hybrid, and also there is another term which is slowly coming up along with multi-cloud is intercloud. That some components are available on one cloud provider and something else is sitting on another cloud provider. Variety of reasons, right? But one of the things which is from data specifically, when you are looking at, the algorithms which I talked about, they are available in a SaaS mode, whether it is risk profiling or whether it is to lend or not to lend decision, or doing KYC, looking at AML checks. All of them are available as SaaS, and most of them are available on the cloud. So you might keep your transaction data in your on-premise. That's what Dipu was also talking about. I think you're keeping it in on-premise, but then you are moving the data elsewhere to have that compute and that ability. So that is one place you will see. Second is there are a plethora of tools which are available, which brings in the aspect of platforms itself is available as a service on the cloud, which could include some of the compute things which is available, which though non-cloud versions or variants or hosted variants, IBM was trying with Deep Blue. But now multiple of those kind of things are available where you can go and model your problem, which gives you agility, which gives you scale, and which gives you economical. You need not invest in getting that entire capacity. So in a nutshell, digitization is nothing but data, and data is exploding. And there are big, beautiful business models which are available. You can go with as much the customer wants, or as little or as much as the customer wants. You can deduce the demand from customers' action, not only from your side. And I will put in as the base driver for whether it's cloud, whether it's digitization, is the data deluge. Just to leave our viewers with a impression saying that, maybe before 2012, maybe, or 2010, maybe a customer data with each of our banks and NBFCs would have been less than an MB. Right? It is only the transaction and whatever was digitized, which is name, address, maybe their transactions, where the products they have subscribed to. Now everything is digitized, including the call records and even WhatsApp or any way in which they are interacting. Some of them are even going in and looking at Twitters or various handles and those kind of things. There are legal limitations, but entire thing can give you a competitive edge. You need cloud to be nimble enough and fast enough to address this exponential increase in data and compete with new age companies. So it is not a question whether you need cloud or what are the benefits. It is how and how fast. Yeah.
So, Mr. Muraleedhar, since you spoke about this, the data in terms of traditional and the new age, and you did mention about, the platform and the SaaS also. So, I'm curious to ask another question from you. Then, since you are talking about the SaaS, you are talking about the platform, and you are in fact talking about the traditional data, which I agree truly that yes, this is going to be a game changer. So, would like to hear from you only that how will then this cloud service like the SaaS which you are talking about, or the PaaS which you are talking about, will really replace the different traditional components and will eventually lead to cloud migration? Because I know there's a change management angle to it, but then it's more than change management, and would like to hear from you that you talk about these platforms, this service model, how will that rip and replace the traditional model in this case?
I'll give you some examples without diverging the details. I cannot. So
yeah.
So coming into two large banks, one is a large global bank based out of US whom we work with, and another is a bank which is there in 40 countries, and both are renewing what you are asking, the traditional data architectures using Teradata. There is a data warehouse. It will crunch data at the end of the day. A report will be in the mailbox of the manager at the end of the day. that is changing. Competition is changing that. And one thing which we didn't talk about is there are new age niche providers from fintechs, as we call them, or there's another word, tech fin. They are coming and taking away a lot of your lucrative businesses. So you have to bury the batch. You cannot think I will do end of day. It is okay for your wealth manager to call on the customer once in a month and explain to her or him that how the portfolio did and how your advice has helped them to be wealthy. They want it on the mobile. They want it immediately as and when things are happening. They suddenly realize that it is the pandemic has changed the investment rules all by itself overnight. So for that to do, you cannot, the traditional model of you get batch mode from one system to another. That is, you assume that data is moving from one bottle to another, poured over using a funnel. Instead of that, you need to start modeling interoperability between applications as electric connections, right? Instantaneous, whatever is happening in one transaction system, you want it analyzed and put it in some place where somebody can consume. So what people are doing is, one, they are preparing themselves. It is not cloud centric at this moment in banks, but they're preparing themselves. So you are moving from each of the batch things are taken away, whichever was the old tools. So data warehouse is moved. The ETL is getting replaced by data pipelines using open source or some versions of Spark or any of those things, right? And you also have realized things like, you have created your internal models for simple things like segmentation and those kind of things, right? Which, how will I segment a customer? That also is slowly moving away to SaaS. You are using, there are tested models, there are fintechs who are collaboratively working with banks to develop these models, and it is becoming a commodity, which is available in pay as you use and that kind of a model. So your risk of getting the model wrong is taken away. While only things which banks are interested in is they are focusing on ensuring that this happens in a very smooth manner, right? So all the intellect which is non-critical is going to SaaS. And for whatever, you might think that I have a very specific proprietary investment model or customer evaluation model. For that, you're using building blocks, which is either available as PaaS on the cloud, off the cloud. To give an example would be, there are tools which are available, visual tools, which will use some of this ML deep learning kind of tools, but they're visual tools. A business analyst can put it on top. And those tools are available as PaaS. So you are getting a system integrator to build this thing together, and then your people are developing. And then it is not, again, it was not a 2-year program by which I will release new lending models, right? The models are incremental, they are agile, they're, you are doing A/B and those kind of testing. So that is where PaaS comes in. And another thing which also happens is pandemic required in between. There was a huge demand for data services because central banks wanted to, mark to market more often. And then you don't have build capacity for that. Overnight you have to deliver those kind of reports. And this will again come into another set of things which will come in terms of only compute or only process. So that goes into your typical infrastructure as a service, storage as a service, data as a service, where maybe your data continues to be in hybrid mode in your data centers, but to compute, to calculate a value at risk, or at volumes, or in mortgages you are looking at how much do they owe, or what is a loan to value has changed because pandemic has changed the underlying or any of those things. Those are then sent to the compute and brought back. So these things are already starting to happen. Will everything move to the cloud? I think it is a question of time. Because another thing which is less talked about, less looked upon is while the infrastructure as a technology itself, I jokingly say that my phone is much more powerful than a server I racked 4 years ago, right? Both in terms of RAM, both in terms of gigahertz of cycle time, and even storage. And this is all SSD, right? This can process more than what was looking like almost like an AC unit, which required 4 people to lift and rack it. This is getting replaced. We haven't upgraded, the CIOs haven't upgraded their people to the same extent. Some of the things which were used to take, saying that, okay, earlier before virtualization day, that installation and getting the server ready was a couple of week process. Now all you need is go to the UI, just click, and your server is ready. And you want to pump in. So those kind of changes is extremely critical. We don't look at those. That's that also helps in terms of moving things faster.
I think specifically if I talk about bank or NBFC or insurance, yes, this is one of the very important and critical factor. And you gave an example of fintech, which is a right example. The way see too fast, the way they innovate. I mean, it's getting by this fintech. So Ashton, very interesting. I mean, this is moving very interesting. New are getting unearthed, and again from the bank point of view, hear from you that when we talk about this speed and agility, when we talk about digitalization, we're talking about how do we really ensure that agility with application modernization? It has clarity, flexibility. So all of this, is it that we achieved cloud deployment, be it multi, because you said this thing that not everything can move. Yes, things can move, but not everything, which even I also agree. So would like to hear from side, what's your view on this?
Okay, thanks, Feroz. So since I last spoke, actually, Dipu, Muraleedhar, Bhavesh have shared a lot of inputs and a lot of insights into the multi-cloud setup, specifically from a BFS sector. And I pretty much agree with all of what has been shared. The counter argument here will always be, but what's so different about a cloud rather than having an on-prem, on-site, 5th gen data center, which will give me the same things? So that could be the counter argument. And then that's where I come in. So one of the main benefits of cloud per se is the agility, the ability to basically have on-demand self-services and rapid elasticity. Again, something that an on-site on-prem data center may not be able to. You basically have scalability, which is at the flick of a switch or a click of your fingers. And that is something that cloud provides you with, and cloud computing provides you with. One, having said that, this has, and cloud in the per se has got a set of different requirements. Multi-cloud is the subject and the theme that we are discussing, which is basically pans across multiple providers. We also have an hybrid cloud approach, which basically could be a combination of a public versus a private setup. And as Muraleedhar had briefly touched upon, we have an interlinked cloud structuring, which is basically a combination of a hybrid and multi-cloud structure. Okay, so rather than getting into the technicalities of how this helps and how do we maintain it from an agility level, I would ideally like to throw upon a concept and a process that we look into, and something that could actually fit the requirements of anything. Huge scale setup, which is basically has got grandfathered legacy systems, or more of an entrepreneurial next gen startup that is looking at just starting up and they want to get into cloud. And this would basically be around 5 concepts or the 5 steps that we would look at. One is gain visibility. It is better to have a clear visibility of what is the infrastructure, what is the end state that we were looking at, what is the objective that we have, and get visibility of what all could help us benefit by making that move and that migration into cloud. Based on that clear visibility of what is critical to us, what is not, what is the things where we need to gain and benefit out of, how do we collaborate, what are the ones that we need to keep within the setup because of the confidentiality of this and the nature of that information and data, and get proper visibility, maybe put in a roadmap in terms of the visibility of what needs to go into the migration. And this then caters to any technology change, any regulatory change that could come up. After that, we get into the second step of the piece or the transition, which is then scoping of the migrations. once we have all that scoped out, etc., we move into the third step, which is basically to evaluate the results of the first two steps in terms of the exercise that we have conducted. After we have a thorough evaluation conducted, we would basically then move into a stage of mitigations and exclusions, mitigating anything that may have gone wrong as we have done through our evaluation on steps 1 and 2, and exclusions if we realize that the steps 1 and 2 did not give us the right results based on the evaluation that we conducted on step 3. So step 4 is nothing but mitigation and exclusions based on what we have done under 1 and 2 and what we have evaluated under 3. And this entire thing would be nothing but step 5, which is an ongoing process that we have and something that we would cater to with any delta, any shift, any change that we have got in our landscapes, both from an infrastructure perspective, from a software perspective, as well as from a regulatory perspective.
In fact, the what and how is clearly now evident, because I think Dipu spoke about, Muraleedhar spoke about, even yourself, Ashton, you gave a lot of examples. Bhavesh interlinked that with the transformation side. So yeah, I mean, it's clear that the what and how is no-brainer. I mean, this is going to happen, and be it multi-cloud, be it hybrid cloud, be it different deployment, be it different services, this is going to really be a game changer for BFSI. Now, Dipu, let me come to you, and I'm taking a step aside from this what and how, and would like to hear from you more from the trend side. That what's your views in terms of the adoption? Because again, I mean, you bring tons of experience in financial service. So now we are all convinced that yes, this is a no-brainer. This is required. But when it comes to adoption, what's your view that what would be the adoption and how much time will this adoption take in terms of the financial services, which is really going to transform the business and bring some growth to the business? So would like to hear the trend side, the adoption side from you. What do you feel? What's your perspective on this?
I think, Feroz, it's a good question, because I think nowadays, given the factor, we are in the COVID-19 phase, whichever way you call it, new normal or, waiting for the new normal. I think adoption, is the key word, right? I think everybody's in the journey, but it's about, how can you, take adoption up. So before we get into, crystal ball gazing, right? Let's look at, what are the key drivers of, adoption, right? Now, of course, everybody knows, that there is tremendous room for growth, in the BFSI industry, from this perspective. But I think what's happened in the last few months, when a lot has happened is, I think some of the myths have been laid to rest, especially when people are talking about security, so on and so forth. So the first thing we have seen, and we all know that, culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? That's something which we all have experienced. So the first thing is, I think people have now begun to embrace change. Earlier they would resist change. I think now, there is a clear desire to embrace change. I think a lot of people are, trying to take advantage of scalability, lower capital costs, ease of operations, resilience, right? Which is so important. The second aspect, I think, is, as we have seen, risk has come to the fore. Now, what is risk? How do you manage uncertainty, right? So this whole idea is, that now when people have begun to talk about adoption, a key aspect when you migrate to the cloud environment is risk mitigation. And I think most people today, of course, as we all know and we have discussed, operate a hybrid security model. So it's also about, how do you keep, deploying, for example, innovation sandboxes, right? To validate, customers' acceptance of new services without disrupting your current services. So I think that's clearly, the second dimension that we are seeing. Third, of course, and I think someone like Ashton can talk about it, he does that day in and day out, is of course security. I think it just remains so very important, so very dry, but so very important. You've seen businesses, right? One hack, one breach, and then, they're all over the media in a negative way, and then they just fall flat. So I guess, there's no amount of underlining of this particular aspect, which we can do. The fourth thing, and again, we have seen, going back to the earlier, focus on, being agile, right? How can we leverage this, to be extremely agile? So I think that's clearly, a focus area. If I were to summarize, Feroz, 2020 has redefined everything from the way we work, from the way, to the way we interact, right? Right now we're doing this, for example, digitally. So I think, there'll be a lot of focus on streamlining the workforce, right? Rethinking our operational infrastructure And especially when we look at models, there'll be a blend of, remote models as well as, physical models, right? So what we have seen is, if you look at various surveys, right, I think around, 2/3 of, firms, typically I think are going to increase their, their cloud computing. I think that's the number which is emerging from, various, surveys. And, let's just hope, that everybody takes it up, with urgency, which is required.
Yeah. And very true. I mean, adoption is going to happen for sure. I can also see that pull in the market. Being in consultancy, it happens so that I interact with different clients in different sectors and all. So yeah, that's clearly evident. And no matter BFSI is one of the topmost in terms of the industry segments. If really I have to demystify this, my point of view is this: if we do a 2x2 matrix, we'll see that. Next to telecom or media, BFSI is a game changing, in terms of the adoption. So definitely, I mean, that adoption is going to happen. Bhavesh, do you agree with this statement of Dipu? Like, is this going to be a trend going forward? So what's your view on this, Bhavesh?
Yeah, sure, certainly. Because, cloud adaptation is not going to stop. It's going to increase because it's a give, agility, scale. And I will give you a new term. Like, look, we have done a small exercise. We have analyzed that our downtime of a different application platform or services which we migrated on cloud. So what we analyzed, like our downtime has reduced by more than 40% for those services or platform or application which we migrated on cloud. So you can see that this is a sort of this cloud journey is also giving us a business continuity mechanism by design. And it not only that, it's also prevent us from issue related to vendor lock, because that in-prem services that vendor support was sometime couple of years back, it was giving some kind of tough time. So if you are moving on a cloud for as an infrastructure services or PaaS, and very importantly SaaS, in BFSI sector we have many services, that is even regulatory services like CKYC. So it's already available on our SaaS platform. That's give us that kind of agility or that speed up to our digitization process. So cloud journey is not going to stop. And as we discussed at the start of this particular session, like whether we are moving back to on our in-prem, look, whenever any services or business are required for to achieve that our business objective, we decide based on our 5-year plan, and most of the time now our toss goes to cloud. So we are moving very fast on cloud.
I totally agree. So, yes, this is evident also. So there are data also which tells that the adoption is moving on, and this trend is going to be there because, the IoTs of the world or the AR/VRs of the world, what we are talking about, you gave an example of lending and mortgage, and when we see that how much there's a cloud penetration in that itself. So yeah, definitely this is clearly evident. Now let me summarize this what we heard. So very interesting. So and I'm glad to say this thing that there are multiple converging views which came out. So it's not like that there are divergent views. The views are really converging well. And when we spoke to Ashton, when Bhavesh, when you yourself spoke about, so yes, we learned that yes, security is of paramount importance. And generally what happens when we talk about multi-cloud, or for that matter hybrid cloud also, there are different challenges which are there in terms of protecting data. And Muraleedhar did spoke about the data, that how do we really secure the data, the quantum of data which we are talking about in a very consistent way. And when we talk about multi-cloud, yes, we even have to keep in mind that there are different service providers. So how do we really make sure that all of the service providers handles the different part of security or infosec or data in a way which really adds value to the to the clients or the customer, where the cloud adoption is there. And for that matter, BFSI is no matter a front runner into this. And the other thing which came very evident is this. when we talk about this platform, like Dipu specifically categorically did mention, he did mention about the the digitalization part, the Alexa part of it, that how do we really bring agility to this? How do we really make sure that the change, the pace and the disruption and innovation what we are talking about, that comes with it. So that's another important part. No matter we talk about the SaaS, PaaS or IaaS, no matter we talk about the traditional or the the new age architecture, we need to be really ready for that change. We need to make sure that yes, when we talk about that business growth, that growth has to come through adoption of different cloud platforms, which is evident also, which we have seen in all of our professional life. So there's a very good takeaway which tells that categorically the banking, NBFC or the insurance, and all of you come from this background. So this not only as a sector but as a topic also, if we talk about cloud, that's making a huge headway, and this headway is going in the right way of the BFSI sector. So it was great hearing your perspective, your views from all of you. And before I wrap up, in interest of time, would like to hear one closing statement from all of you, that what exactly do you think is going to happen in multi-cloud for next 2 years or 3 years? So Dipu, let me start from you. What do you think as a closing statement for the the multi-cloud?
I think the focus clearly will be on two dimensions. One is the customer and therefore data. And I think from that perspective, two things emerge. One is security. The other is, how can you crunch data to make analytics decentralized and democratized?
Great. Muraleedhar, your views?
I'd lighten it up a little bit in the sense that I will say that there's a huge humidity of data, that is, it is evaporating. You need cloud computing to rain business benefits. Without that, it is not going to happen. Yes. Both from what Dipu said on both points, you need security. To provide security on your own for a large quantum of data will be a huge investment. And on top of that, you need models and compute as well as analytical models to address this data. There will be, I would assume that, though BFSI was slow to start, like in many other parts of compute, BFSI will start leading, cloud adoption. In 3 years' time, when you look at it, almost all banks will look like they are SaaS providers, banking SaaS providers, or NBFC lenders on the cloud, or banks on the cloud. It will look like that. Regulatory has to change.
Great. Bhavesh, your views?
Yeah, so my view is cloud adaptation will continue till the time it's give value to our business. And my experience is most of the time budget comes quickly once it's related to either customer service or data analytics. These two areas is hot. So if cloud adaptation in these two areas will continue.
Great. Ashton?
Sure. So Feroz, I'll end with the thought, in a multi-cloud setup, given that we've got different service providers having different standard and processes, and also the fact that as CISOs, and given CISO hat that I wear, we've actually lost the ability to say no and stop to business in terms of any innovation that they want to carry out. So it's best that we manage security in the cloud for ourselves, and the security of the cloud is left to the service provider. Having said, we also realize that there is never going to be any end state or nirvana as far as security is concerned. So we have to be on our toes, always be aware and awake. Thank you.
And my closing statement to this is that yes, we heard multi-cloud from all of you, and at least my thinking is this, that this is a landscape which is going to bring agility, speed, and most importantly the business continuity, which is of paramount importance to any BFSI vertical. With this, I would like to close this interesting panel discussion. I hope that the audience would have taken note from the panel members, the eminent panel members, and their views what they have shared. It's very important that I must highlight that the views are very, very important. It's $1 million worth, and for any practitioner or for any customers, this is going to be a game changer. With that, let me close it off, and I thank a ton to all of you for sparing time for this interesting panel discussion.
For more updates from CXO TV, please like and subscribe to our channel.